Nikole Betterson was 2 years old when she disappeared from Michigan in December of 1977. But here's the part of her story that has haunted investigators for decades. 20 years later, police found Nikole's father living in Las Vegas. They found his wife. They found records showing that someone had continued collecting Nikole's Social Security survivor benefits. But they could not find Nikole. And then her father told the detective that he knew what had happened to his daughter. He promised to tell him. He never did. Because before he could give investigators the answer they'd been looking for 20 years, Jarrett Betterson killed his wife, and then himself. And Nikole's whereabouts went with him. This is the story of a little girl who disappeared nearly half a century ago. A child whose life seems to vanish from the records shortly after she left Michigan. And a family mystery that may have died with the only person who investigators believe could explain it. This is the story of Nikole Betterson.
Keep your eyes open. We're going in.
Nikole S. Betterson was born in 1975. When she disappeared, she was just 2 years old. She was described as biracial, with brown or black hair and brown eyes. She was approximately 2 feet 7 inches tall and weighed about 26 pounds. But statistics don't tell us who a child is. Nikole wasn't born a missing person case. She was a little girl. She had parents, she had grandparents, and she had a family who would eventually spend decades wondering what became of her. Her mother was Susan Klingel. Her father was Jarrett Betterson. Susan's parents, Bill and Mary Klingel, were Nikole's maternal grandparents. And in 1977, they were living in Michigan. But that year would change their family forever. Because before Nikole disappeared, tragedy had already entered her life. And it happened suddenly. In September of 1977, Nikole, her mother Susan, and her father Jarrett were involved in a serious car accident. Susan was killed. Nikole and Jarrett survived the crash without serious injuries. For a 2-year-old child, losing her mother was an enormous loss. And suddenly the family that had surrounded Nikole was changing. Susan's parents were now raising questions about what would happen to their granddaughter. And according to accounts of the case, the relationship between Nikole's parents and her father was already strained. There were disagreements about Jarrett. There were tensions within the family. And shortly after Susan's death, Jarrett began seeing another woman. Her name was Barbara. For the moment, though, Nikole was still there. She was still part of the family, still in Michigan, still a little girl who had people who knew where she was. But that was about to change. Because sometime that fall, Jarrett and Barbara began making plans to leave Michigan. And they intended to take Nikole with them. But where? Jarrett and Barbara told Nikole's grandparents they were going to move west. But there was a problem. Nobody seemed to know exactly where they were going. Some accounts said California. Others pointed towards Las Vegas. Even the destination was uncertain. According to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, Nikole was last seen by her grandparents around Christmas of 1977. Jarrett had announced that he and Barbara were moving west, and they were taking Nikole with them. One account reported that Barbara assured Nikole's grandparents that she would take care of the little girl. And then came the goodbye. Nikole's grandparents watched their granddaughter leave. They believed they would see her again, but they didn't. And this is where Nikole's story takes its first truly disturbing turn. Because after that departure, there is almost nothing. There is an important point we need to make here. The records don't give us a precise hour when Nikole disappeared. There isn't a documented time. There isn't a final phone call. There isn't a confirmed last photograph taken at a specific time. And because Nikole was only 2 years old, she wasn't going to leave a trail of her own. Her movements depended entirely on the adults around her. Jarrett and Barbara disappeared from the family's life, and Nikole disappeared with them. Her grandparents never heard from them again. Years began passing. One Christmas became another. One birthday became another. And Nicole's second birthday became the last birthday her family could celebrate knowing where she was. But here's something even stranger. Nikole wasn't immediately reported missing, and that would become one of the most important facts in the case. The years passed, and the Bettersons were gone. There was no regular contact, no photographs of Nikole growing older, no school records showing the little girl entering kindergarten, no ordinary trail of childhood records, no clear evidence that she had ever arrived at the destination her father had promised. And according to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, when investigators eventually searched for Nikole, they found no paper trail establishing that she was alive after leaving Michigan. But there was one trail, a financial one. Nikole was entitled to Social Security survivor benefits because her mother had died. Those benefits continued, and her father continued collecting them. According to investigators, he picked up the payments until Nikole would have turned 18. Think about what that means. For years, there was evidence that Nikole existed on paper, but almost no evidence that she existed in the world. No school, no clear medical trail, no adoption record, no confirmed adult life, just the monthly benefits. So where was Nikole, and why did nobody seem to know? 20 years after Nikole disappeared, her grandparents finally decided to search for her. By then, Nikole would have been about 22 years old. She was no longer the little 2-year-old they remembered. If she was alive, she would be an adult. And perhaps they thought she could now decide for herself whether she wanted a relationship with them. So they hired a private investigator, and the investigator found Jarrett and Barbara. They were living in Las Vegas, but Nikole wasn't with them. After 20 years, the people who had taken Nikole west had been found, but the child they had supposedly taken with them was nowhere to be found. The investigators began looking through records, and then authorities became involved. The Las Vegas Police Department searched school records, court records, police records, licensing records, adoption records, and other available sources. But they couldn't find evidence that Nikole had established a life in Las Vegas. According to the police department, the investigation found no evidence that she was alive after leaving Michigan. And suddenly a 20-year-old disappearance became something much darker, because investigators now had a question they couldn't answer. What happened to a 2-year-old child after she left Michigan? In November of 1997, a Las Vegas detective went to speak with Jarrett Betterson. His name was Jeff Rosgen. And according to accounts of the investigation, Rosgen made a calculated decision. He told Jarrett the police knew what had happened to Nikole. They didn't, but the detective wanted Jarrett to believe that they did. And he offered leniency if Jarrett would finally tell the truth. And the bluff appeared to work. Jarrett indicated that he would cooperate. He said he would come back and tell investigators what had happened to Nikole. After 20 years, police finally had hope. Maybe the mystery was about to end. Maybe Nikole's father was finally going to explain where his daughter was. But then he asked for more time, and then more time, and then he stopped cooperating. And before investigators could get another chance to question him, something happened that would permanently change the case. Around this same period, a letter arrived at the house of Jarrett's mother. It was from Barbara. She hadn't been in contact with the family for nearly 20 years, and the contents of that letter were deeply troubling. Barbara apologized for the pain the family had experienced, and she asked for forgiveness, and she included money intended to pay for the couple's cremation. The letter didn't tell the family where Nikole was. It didn't provide a location. It didn't provide a confession. It didn't provide the answer to the central question: where was their granddaughter? And then came the news that would leave that question hanging for nearly another 30 years. In November 1997, Jarrett Betterson killed his wife Barbara and then himself. Las Vegas police were left without the person they believed might finally explain what had happened to Nikole. And that changed the investigation completely. Because if Jarrett knew what happened to Nikole, he was no longer alive to tell investigators. And if Barbara knew, she was gone too. Whatever they knew about Nikole was now potentially locked away with them. Let's stop here for a moment and separate the facts from the theories. We know Nikole was 2 years old. We know her mother died in a car accident in September 1977. We know Nikole and her father survived that crash. We know Jarrett later became involved with Barbara. We know Jarrett and Barbara planned to move west. We know Nikole's grandparents last saw her around Christmas of 1977. We know the destination was unclear, California or Las Vegas. We know Jarrett and Barbara were eventually located in Las Vegas 20 years later. We know investigators could not find a meaningful record trail for Nikole. We know Jarrett continued collecting her Social Security benefits. And we know that in 1997, after police confronted him, Jarrett indicated that he would tell investigators what had happened. He never did. Instead, he killed Barbara and himself. Those are the facts. Now, let's talk about what we don't know. We don't know exactly when Nikole died, if she died. We don't know where she went after leaving Michigan. We don't know whether she ever reached Las Vegas. We don't know whether she ever reached California. We don't know why there's apparently no ordinary childhood record trail showing that she lived somewhere else. We don't know why her Social Security benefits continued to be collected for years. And we don't know exactly what Jarrett intended to tell Detective Rosjan. That last question may be the most haunting one of all, because Jarrett apparently believed there was something he could tell police, something important enough that investigators wanted him to come forward. But whatever that information was, we never got to hear it. There are theories about what may have happened to Nikole. Some people believe she may have died when she was still very young. Others have wondered whether she could have been taken somewhere and raised under another name. But there's no publicly established evidence that allows us to say either theory is true. And that's important because after nearly 50 years, it can be tempting to fill the silence with an answer. But silence isn't evidence. The missing records aren't proof of a particular fate. And Jarrett's suicide doesn't tell us exactly what happened to Nikole. It only tells us that the person investigators believed might have information about her was suddenly gone. The official Las Vegas police listing classifies the case as an unsolved disappearance in which foul play is suspected. This is the part of Nikole's story that I don't want us to lose, because it's easy when we're talking about a case that's almost 50 years old to think about it as history, something that happened a long time ago. But Nikole wasn't history. She was a little girl. She should have grown up. She should have gone to school. She should have had friends. She should have had birthdays. She should have had the opportunity to become whoever she was going to become. Instead, the last confirmed photographs of her are from when she was a tiny child. And somewhere in the middle of all those years, Nikole disappeared from the record. So where does that leave us? We have a 2-year-old girl who left Michigan with her father and his girlfriend. We have a family who never saw her again. We have conflicting reports about where the adults plan to go. We have a 20-year gap before anyone began actively searching for her. We have investigators who eventually found the adults, but not the child. We have a missing person investigation that uncovered almost no evidence of Nikole's life after Michigan. And we have a father who indicated he knew what happened, but died before he could tell investigators. And somewhere in that story is the answer. Maybe it's in a forgotten record. Maybe it's in somebody's memory. Maybe someone remembers seeing Nikole after she left Michigan. Maybe someone knows where she was taken. Or maybe the most important piece of evidence is something that has been sitting unnoticed for decades. Nikole Betterson disappeared when she was only 2 years old. Today, the little girl in that photograph would be around 50 years old. But the last photograph most of us have of her still shows a child. That's the cruel thing about a case like this. Time keeps moving. Nikole's family grew older. The people who may have known the truth are gone, and yet Nikole's story remains unfinished. We don't know what happened to her. We don't know where she went, and we don't know whether the answer is still waiting somewhere to be found. But we do know her name. And as long as we keep saying it, she hasn't been forgotten. If you know anything about Nikole Betterson, or if you have information that could help investigators determine what happened to her, please contact the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Their missing persons unit number is 702-229-3111. That phone number will be in the description box below this video. And if you've never heard Nikole's story before, I hope you'll take a moment to subscribe to Voices Left Behind, because that's what this channel is about, giving a voice to people whose cases may have been overlooked, keeping their names in front of the public, and reminding people that a missing person doesn't stop mattering just because decades have passed. Nikole was 2 years old when she disappeared. She never got the chance to tell us what happened, so until that answer is found, we can tell her story.